Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jayapataka Swami
The following is a lecture given by His Holiness Jayapataka Swami on April 29, 1985 at New Orleans, Louisiana. The class begins with a reading from the Caitanya Charitamrita, Adi Līla, Chapter 8, Text 21.
Jayo Jayo Sri Caitanya Jayo Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jayo Jayo Sri Caitanya Jayo Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jayo Jayo Sri Caitanya Jayo Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda Kakaroti Vachalang Pangurangayate Giring Yat Kripa Tamahang Bande Sri Gurung Dinatarinang Yat Kripa Tamahang Bande Paramananda Madhavam Yat Kripa Tamahang Bande Sri Chaitanya Iswaram Ajanulambita Bhuja Kanakavadato Sankirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dijabaro Jugadharma Palo Bande Jagat Priya Karo Karunavataro Bande Jagat Priya Karo Karunavataro Sri Caitanya Charitamrita Adi Līla Chapter 8 Text 21 Swatantra Isha Premani Gura Bandha Swatantra Isha Premani Gura Bandha Bilailo Jare Tare Na Koi Lo Vichar Bilailo Jare Tare Na Koi Lo Vichar. Translation. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself, is fully independent. Therefore, although it is the most confidentially stored benediction, He can distribute love of Godhead to anyone and everyone without consideration. Translation with repetition. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself, is fully independent. Therefore, although it is the most confidentially stored benediction, He can distribute love of Godhead to anyone and everyone without consideration. Purport. This is the benefit of Lord Chaitanya's movement. If one somehow or other comes in contact with the Hare Krishna movement without consideration of his being a Sudra, Vaisya, Jagai, Madhai, or even lower, he becomes advanced in spiritual consciousness and immediately develops love of Godhead. We now have actual experience that throughout the entire world, this movement is making many such persons lovers of God simply by the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Actually, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared as the spiritual master of the entire world. He does not discriminate between offenders and the innocent. Krishna prema pradayate. He liberally gives love of Godhead to anyone and everyone. This can be actually experienced as stated in the next verse. Adyapi hadeko Caitanya nam jeloi Krishna preme pulakasru vivala se hoy. Adyapi hadeko Caitanya nam jeloi Krishna preme pulakasru vivala se hoy. Translation. Whether he is offensive or inoffensive, anyone even now anyone who even now chants Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda is immediately overwhelmed with ecstasy and tears fill his eyes. Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Brahmananda. Prabhupada had told him that in Africa, some of those, Prabhupada said just to train the people to chant Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Because, I don't know if this is because it's one of the places where the only way they take cow's milk is they cut the jugular vein of the cow and take a little blood and put it in. I don't know if that was why or what the reason why, but whatever it might be, that even if a person is offensive or inoffensive, that if they chant the name Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda, they can get spiritual benefit. You see, generally speaking, any practice of religion, first thing is that a person has to become inoffensive, sinless. Of course, even in Krishna consciousness, we certainly recommend that people should become free of offenses. However, just that we can understand the depth of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, that it's not a prerequisite for him to give his mercy. If someone chants the name, they can immediately get the mercy of the Lord, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Of course, once one takes that mercy and advances to a certain stage, then Lord Chaitanya expects that the person would, once they make a commitment not to commit sinful activities again, then Lord Chaitanya expects, of course, that they would maintain that. But the initial state, practically speaking, there's no disqualification. Lord Chaitanya is so merciful that even if one's an offender, he can get the mercy. So, someone can say, well, what's the rationale for that? It's not logical, or it's not following any established system. Well, that's because Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of God. He doesn't have to follow any established system. He's independent, he can do whatever he likes. He makes the ground rules. So in this particular avatar, in this particular descent, his mood is just to give out the mercy. If you start to go through the credentials, then so many people may not get the mercy. His mood is just to give it out. Just like sometimes they have house clearance. Everything must go. See it advertised. That time, everything you get flat discount. So here Lord Chaitanya, he's in the mood that let everyone go, let them all go back to Godhead. Of course, there's so many stubborn mudhas that even though this great opportunity is there, they don't take it up. Who could be more of a mudha than someone who has this opportunity and then doesn't take it up? Prabhupada once told a story about a lazy man. Some people are so lazy when it comes to their spiritual life, they don't want to lift a finger. So, we should try to avoid being lazy at this time, because we just have to take a little effort and we can get the mercy. Prabhupada told the story about the lazy man. One king wanted to feed all the lazy men in his kingdom free. So he advertised. There was a big hall, but so many people came that it was more than he could feed. It would become a big burden on the exchequer. So he asked his minister what to be done. So the minister said, you light the whole hall on fire with the people inside. So then he lit the hall on fire. Naturally, everybody started running and screaming and running out of the burning building. And they went inside, and they found that there were two people laying down there. And one was telling the other one that it seems a little bit, it's getting a little bit hot in here. Feeling the heat on my back. What should I do? The other one said, roll over to the other side. Don't you feel hot? They're so lazy that even the house is burning down, they wouldn't run out. And the king saw those two, said, these are the real lazy guys. These guys are really lazy. So he agreed to feed them. So, of course, most people, they're not real lazy. But they're, they're awake, pretending they're asleep. Just like when it's time to get up for Mangalarti, if somebody's asleep, you can wake him up. But if he's awake, he doesn't want to go to Mangalarti, he's pretending he's asleep. It's very hard to wake such a person up. Even you shake him, he'll be having the cover over his head or her head or whatever. So, person, if they're asleep, naturally they can be woken up. But if they're being a little devious, pretending they're asleep when actually they're awake, then what can you do? So there are people that even they know that what they're doing isn't rightly situated, but they pretend as if they don't know. That type of situation is, of course, very unfortunate. So nobody gets cheated but the person himself. They said that in the material world, whatever you want, you get it. Or whatever is your due, rather, by the law of karma, that will come of its own accord. You may not get everything you want exactly when you want it. Eventually, get the opportunity to get everything which is available in the material world, if you have sufficient karma. That's another thing. The point is that whatever your karmas are, you'll get some results, or you won't get any results, according to what the karmas are. But something will happen automatically, positive or negative. But being Krishna conscious, doesn't happen automatically. It's not that if you're here 10 billion births, you'll go back to Godhead. Just like somebody gets a sentence, you have to spend 10 years, and if you serve 5 years in good behavior, get off. Everyone in this material world is a nitya baddha. They are here eternally. Until they want to get out. If they're one of those lazy fellows, they just want to roll over to avoid the heat on this side or that side, they're going to be here. But if they actually want to get out of material suffering, or if they want to achieve Krishna's service, they want to achieve eternal love for Godhead, or whatever may be their desire, if they want anything transcendental, then they have to try for that specifically. Doesn't happen automatically. Of course, unless just like for Shivananda Sena, he somehow took a fancy to some dog, was taking the dog with the Sankirtan party that was going down from Bengal to Jagannath Puri. And somehow or another he would feed the dog, pay for its ferry charge, take it across the river. When it get lost, he'd send people out, bring it back. He gave some special mercy out of his own accord, out of his own initiative. Finally, that dog disappeared right when they were outside of Jagannath Puri. When they came into Jagannath Puri, Shivananda Sena went to see Lord Caitanya. There he saw that the dog was sitting there. Lord Caitanya was taking some coconut prasad, just throwing the dog little pieces. The dog was just catching it with his mouth. This way that dog went back to Godhead because of the mercy of Shivananda Sena. So, whether one's own initiative or in some cases someone like Lord Nityananda took an initiative with Jagai Madai, or Shivananda Sena took an initiative with this dog, that's like some special causeless mercy. But generally speaking, in any case, it requires some initiative. It doesn't happen on its own. It's not just an automatic thing. Automatically, according to karma, just the reactions in the three modes are happening. It's totally beyond the modes of nature. So therefore it doesn't happen according to karma. Karma is only the three modes, Nistraygunya. This is beyond the three modes, Gunatit, So, if you want to get the mercy of Lord Caitanya, whether you're qualified or unqualified, whether you're good or bad, whether you're whatever you may be, but if you just take a little step forward, just go there, just ask Lord Caitanya for the mercy, just chant the names He's given. Just for the asking, you can have it. Of course, people are so unfortunate that they don't take it. They don't even want to know about it in some cases. That's their misfortune. So the devotees, by hook or by crook, they try to get the people to chant. Knowing that that's their... If somehow or another they chant Krishna, then He'll take, alright, they've taken the initiative, He'll give His mercy. Just like Buddhimanta Khan, one devotee of Lord Caitanya, he went to the Chankasi and he would always say, why don't you chant Hare Krishna? You should chant Hare Krishna. So finally the Chankasi said, alright, well I'll chant Hare Krishna tomorrow. Hare Hare Hare. He was jumping up and down, Haribo, Haribo. You've already chanted. You just said Hare Krishna today. Your good fortune has begun. Haribo, Haribo, the Chandkazi's begun chanting Hare Krishna. So, in this way, the devotees, somehow or another, they get the people to chant. And even Haridas Thakur, when he'd walk down the road, sometimes the kids would say, oh, look at, there comes that Haridas Thakur, he's always chanting Hare Krishna. Let's get him angry, let's make fun. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, make some kind of mimicking. Haridas Thakur would look very offended, knowing that then they'd get more inspired to chant louder. Inside he was very happy that somehow or another they're chanting. Outwardly looked very formal, very offended. What are they? So then they chant louder. So the devotees, somehow or another, they get people to chant. That's their mission. Rupa Goswami said, Yena tena prakarena Krishna mana nivosate. By any means, you get people to accept Krishna. By any means. Once they've accepted Krishna, once they've become attached to Krishna consciousness, then you can introduce rules and other ways that they can maintain their purity. Because without purity, how they'll get a higher taste? They may get a flash, they may get a glimpse, but they won't be able to maintain it, because it'll be like a hati snan, bathing of the elephant. Elephant goes in, bathes, scrubs. We have a swimming pool in Mayapur. Not for people. I mean, for people, but not for humans. For elephant people. It's a swimming pool only for the elephants. And they go in there and they take their bath. Especially now in the hot weather, twice a day. They go in their swimming pool. Kanva Prabhu knows. But they like to come out and they like to take the dust and then throw it on their back. We don't keep much dust around there, so they don't always get a chance. But if they do, they pick it up. So what's the use? You just scrub yourself clean, then you come out and you start rubbing yourself with dirt again. What's the use? And those elephants, somehow that's their mentality. They like to have the dust on them. So, that type of bath where a person's chanting, he's getting purified, then they go out and commit offenses. It's like an elephant bath. So actually that's not going to give one a very continuous feeling for transcendental ecstasy, for spiritual realization. So once they come to the point of a little bit of purification, then of course it's necessary to introduce what are the basic minimum standards of purity that they should maintain so that they can continuously taste the nectar of Krishna consciousness, so that their devotional service would be inoffensive. Ahitu gyapratihata, or as said, anya vilashita sunyam jnana karmana vijam anukulena Krishna anusilanam. It should be favorable, following Krishna. So once they get a little bit purified, then you can introduce. So that's the basic program. But what Lord Chaitanya, his special nature for Lord Chaitanya Nityananda is that without, even though one hasn't achieved that type of purity, even though they might be unqualified, still Lord Chaitanya, he gives them his mercy. The devotee tries to induce people to, after they get a little advanced, to become pure. But Lord Chaitanya is so liberal that he's giving his initial mercy without considering anything. Papitapi jato chilo harinam uddharilo tarsa ki jagai manhai. Adyapiha means even up to date. He's saying Adyapiha deko Chaitanya nam jeloy. They even say up to this day, whoever takes Lord Chaitanya's name, Krishna preme pulagastu vivalase hoy, he immediately becomes overwhelmed with ecstasy, tears fill his eyes. Regarding this, Prabhupada gives a purport. The prakrita sahajiyas who chant Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam have very little knowledge of the Bhagavat conclusion, and they hardly know the Vaishnava rules and regulations. And yet because they chant Bhajo Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam, their chanting immediately invokes tears and other signs of ecstasy. Although they do not know the principles of Vaishnava philosophy and are not very advanced in education, by these symptoms they attract many men to become their followers. Their ecstatic tears of course, help them in the long run, for as soon as they come in contact with a pure devotee, their lives will become successful. Even in the beginning, however, because they are chanting the holy names of Nitai Gaur, their swift advancement on the path of love of Godhead is very prominently visible. Just every day, behind our temple in Vrindavan, you can hear, depending which room you get, the back of the guest house, there's this group has a branch there, and they're chanting always, Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, and it goes on day and night. You hear them chanting. And they don't accept all of the 6 Goswamis, they're not very strict. But some of them, as they say, they manifest in chanting this mantra, Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam, they start to manifest some ecstatic symptoms. This attracts the people, because it seems pretty easy. Prabhupada, of course, he didn't want us to, wanted us to purify these people. One time he told us that we should chant Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Jai Krishna Balaram. Because in Vrindavan we have our Nitai Gaur deities, Radhe Shyam and Krishna Balaram. So he's saying Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Jai Krishna Balaram. It's the names of the deities. But he told us that he was very much against this kind of breaking up. That Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur also said that this breaking up of the Panchatattva name, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, this is not bona fide. We shouldn't take mantras and then start cutting them up and then remixing them around. We don't have the authority to do that. They're given in the scripture. The Vedas has given the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. The Panchatattva mantra is given by Krishnadas Kaviraj, other great acharyas. So just taking a little bit here, a little bit there. Once I got in a discussion with another group that had a similar mantra, and then I challenged them on this point that why are you giving khandonam? Khandonam means you're taking the name and you're breaking it up into bit by bit. That's called khandos. Broken mantras. Bits and pieces of mantras. So, discussion went on. He was a great scholar. He knew Chaitanya Charitamrita by heart. He could just say whole chapters. But he didn't have any answer for that basic question. So finally, using Prabhupada's technique of just finding the weak point, coming back again and again, then finally he had to surrender after trying every means to duck out of the argument. Their technique, you see, what we discuss with these pandits, when you get them square on in a corner, then they return with a question to distract you, a high question. Just like I hit him with that, then he said, well then if Hare Krishna is the greatest mantra, then why did Haridas Thakur, the last breath of his life, why did he say that when I take my last breath, I want to say Sri Krishna Caitanya? He's a Namacharya, he chanted Hare Krishna Mahamantra his whole life. Why was the last desire he wanted to say Sri Krishna Caitanya when he took his last breath? Of course, it had nothing to do with our basic point, but they just throw something like that. So, of course, at that time, Prabhupada was very merciful and he gave us some intelligence to be able to discuss, even though we're not such a great scholar, like we haven't had the time to memorize verbatim chapters of Chaitanya Charitamrita, although by Prabhupada's mercy, with his purports and with his instruction, we were able to understand something of this great literature. Without his mercy, nothing is possible. So, of course, that type of logic that Haridas Thakur, his whole life he chanted the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and we are not to imitate Haridas Thakur when he's leaving his body and he's putting, it's like Bhishma leaving. When he concentrated on Krishna and he left his body, so Haridas Thakur is just concentrating his consciousness on the lotus face of Lord Chaitanya and leaving. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't in any way reduce the value of chanting Hare Krishna. In any case, we have to follow the order of Haridas Thakur, not just imitate. But his whole life, his example was he chanted Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and he also instructed us to do the same. So first we chant Sri Krishna Chaitanya, then Hare Krishna. So then again we ask, so why are you breaking the Hare Krishna Mantra then? Again he threw out a bunch of Sanskrit verses to start, then he finally said, alright, in our spiritual, when a pujari is doing worship, he's within the material, or she's within the material body. At that time, on the altar, you have simultaneously Radha Krishna, you also have Chaitanya Nityananda, you have Lord Chaitanya, Radha Krishna in Madhurya Rasa, the Lord Chaitanya is in Adhurya Rasa, Radha Krishna in Vrindavan, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in Navadvip, in the spiritual reality of the altar. You are worshipping them in your meditation, they're in their respective abodes. So, the devotees of Lord Chaitanya are supposed to have their Siddha Swarup, male form, and the devotees of Radha Krishna in their Siddha Swarup have the female form. So how do you simultaneously worship both of them when you're sitting in your one material form? That was his next question. Again, nothing at all to do with breaking up the Hare Krishna mantra and the Panchatattva mantra. It had nothing whatsoever to do with that topic. But this is their technique. They just come up with some. Normally it blows away people like, what's the answer for that? Fortunately, Srila Prabhupada personally discussed this point with us in some private meetings in Mayapur, that in the spiritual world, that the devotees of Lord Chaitanya simultaneously appear in both the places. So we brought that point up. He said, well, all right, touche. You knew that one. But you're not. But then when you're you're doing puja, you're not able to simultaneously do the worship. You have to do one after. So which one will you do first? So you have to do Lord Chaitanya first, then Radha Krishna, because this is the way the parampara goes. Wild again. So finally, when he couldn't get, then again he said, well, listen, we have to break it up, the mantra, because it's more a public appeal. People like it. Radhe Shyam, Radha Govinda, Nitai. People don't know Lord Chaitanya. Everyone knows Radhe Shyam, they know Radha Govinda. So we break up the mantra and we put it together. It's more attractive. Everybody, it's got a little bit of everything. A little bit for the Rajasthanis and the North Indians, and for the East Indians. It's very topical. I said, what does that have to do with transcendental knowledge? You just break up the mantras given in the scripture just because it's for popularity contest. Where does the scripture allow us that license to take mantras and divide them up? Then he said, actually, we chant Hare Krishna too, once a year. Gaur Purnima, for one day. You people are doing good work. Didn't have any answer. So even though they have a lot of academic knowledge, but somehow Maya steals it, and they have so much little technical knowledge. That's what's the danger. You see some of the devotees, they read some of these books, get all these little details, and they lose sight of just the basics, lose sight of what's the actual purpose of Krishna consciousness. Just like you get some of these pandit, they know so much, and they miss the whole point. They just start to speculate. They don't know how to bring it all together because they're not following the strict parampara. That's why they're called swajya. They may know this or that, some technical points, but then they make a whole mess of it. Still, somehow or another, by chanting Chaitanya's name, they get some vibration going there. Gradually, many of them surrendered to Srila Prabhupada and took shelter of ISKCON. A lot of people are more and more, as time goes on, taking shelter of Krishna consciousness movement. Because they see that we are following strictly the principles of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Strictly the principles of the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's no shortcut. Shorter than the direct route. Any other detour off into some other speculation is just a detour, it's a delay. It's not a shortcut. Shortcut is this way. The way approved by the Acharyas, by the 6 Goswamis, by Jiva Goswami, by Rupa Goswami, by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada. So, for Prabhupada, he told us that don't break up mantras, don't make up any mantras, don't chant any bogus mantras, just keep it simple. Chant Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Giradhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And he also, sometimes in Mayapur, he said we could chant Hare Haraya Namo, Krishna Jadavaya Namo, Gopal Govinda Ram, Shri Madhusudan. Even sometimes in Kirtan, one time, I was trying to get the devotees to chant. So I was leading, I said, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. People weren't chanting, so I just threw in there, Bolo! That means chant. Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Prabhupada called me over. He said, what is this Bolo? Don't add any new words in the mantra. I wasn't, it was just trying to get the people to chant. But Prabhupada was very sensitive. He didn't want any more bhajas or bolos or anything stuck inside the mantra. Just a straight, authorized Maha Mantra, Panchatattva mantra. Sometimes Hari Hari, the Sankirtan mantra or Sankirtan chant. But apart from that, was another form of Maha Mantra. Apart from those authorized mantras, no additions, no subtractions, subtractions. As it is. Nityananda bolite hoy, Krishna premodoy, Aulai shakal ango asru ganga boy, Aulai shakal ango asru ganga boy. Translation. Simply by talking of Nityananda Prabhu, one awakens his love for Krishna. Thus all his bodily limbs are agitated by ecstasy, and tears flow from his eyes like the waters of the Ganges. Translation of the petition. Simply by talking of Nityananda Prabhu, one awakens his love for Krishna. Thus all his bodily limbs are agitated by ecstasy, and tears flow from his eyes like the waters of the Ganges. There was one time we read the glories of Minikitam Ramdas. He would just go and touch people with his flute and they'd become ecstatic. You find that Lord Nityananda, he is very popular in Bengal and Orissa. Even to this date, his personality is very blissful. And as Lord Nityananda Prabhu was always manifesting, Lord Caitanya would consider who is watching, or sometimes try to maintain a certain gravity. With Nityananda Prabhu, a lot of times he didn't bother for anything. If he was feeling very ecstatic in love for Krishna, he wouldn't.
The only remedy is to surrender to the lotus feet of Krishna and thus become saved. Thank you very much.
People don't understand your transcendental activities always. You don't want them to commit offenses. The main thing is Lord Nityananda, of course, he would give his benediction pretty liberally. Even when Junior Haridas was banned by Lord Caitanya, Nityananda tried also to reinstate him. Lord Nityananda is very kind, very forgiving. And we're very fortunate here in Sankirtanpur that we have Lord Nityananda and Lord Caitanya personally present. And somehow or another, if we get the mercy of Lord Nityananda, Narottam Das Thakur is saying, Haha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi. That, oh, my dear Lord Nityananda, you're always filled with transcendental love, the bliss of transcendental love for Krishna. That ecstasy you're always filled with. Kripa bala akona koro, ami boro dukhi. So please have your mercy upon me because I'm most miserable. Therefore I need your mercy. Lord Nityananda, he's very liberal. He's always very ecstatic. His devotees are always very ecstatic. So, therefore we worship Lord Caitanya and Lord Nityananda because they're very merciful. So we're very fortunate that they've appeared here. We should try to give them what they like most, a lot of spontaneous devotional service and ecstatic kirtans. By their presence, naturally one can experience the perfection of Krishna consciousness. Just as last night we heard some of the guests or some of the devotees, the folk members, express some amazing experiences they had. I don't know if you were all here then, they might have been busy. Some of them were saying some amazing things about the waves of ecstasy that they were experiencing in some of the kirtans. So even though certainly they also admitted that they had a lot of problems in following some of the principles, still by the mercy of Nitai Gaur, in spite of their not being always very pure, they were able to experience some very sublime experiences in Krishna consciousness. So it's all by the mercy of Lord Nityananda and Lord Caitanya. They are personally present here. Krishna naam kore aparadh here bichar, Krishna naam bolile aparadh here na hoy bikar. There are offenses to be considered while chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Therefore, simply by chanting Hare Krishna, one does not become ecstatic. It gives the whole description of the 10 offenses. In this regard, Prabhupada says, it is very beneficial to chant the name Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda before chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, because by chanting these two holy names, Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda, one immediately becomes ecstatic, and if he then chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, he becomes free of offenses. Text 25. Tadasma sarang hidayang vatedam yad grihamanay harinamadeyai navikriyetat yada vikaro nitte chalanga charuhe shuhasha. Translation. If one's heart does not change, tears do not flow from his eyes, his body does not shiver, nor his hair stand on end as he chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, it should be understood that his heart is as hard as iron. This is due to his offenses at the lotus feet of the Lord's holy names. Translation with repetition. If one's heart does not change, tears do not flow from his eyes, his body does not shiver, nor his hair stand on end as he chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, it should be understood that his heart is as hard as iron. This is due to his offenses at the lotus feet of the Lord's holy name. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, commenting on this verse, which is a quotation from the Srimad Bhagavatam 2.3.24, remarks that sometimes a Maha Bhagavata or very advanced devotee does not manifest such transcendental symptoms as tears in the eyes, although sometimes a Kanishta Adhikari, neophyte devotee, displays them artificially. This does not mean, however, that the neophyte is more advanced than the Maha Bhagavat devotee. The test of the real change of heart takes place when one chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is that one becomes detached from material enjoyment. This is the real change. Bhaktir parasyanubhavo viraktiranyatra syat. If one is actually advancing in spiritual life, he must become very much detached from material enjoyment. If it is sometimes found that a Kanishta Adhikari, neophyte devotee, shows artificial tears in his eyes while chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, but is still completely attached to material things, his heart has not really changed. The change must be manifested in terms of one's real activities. Om Tat Sat. So, are there any questions? Manarupa Dasi. Well, we should always be friendly. The problem is not for discussing with such people if they're willing to hear It's not a problem to discuss with them. The problem is that there may be other sincere people who are walking by that we're missing. When we're in Sankirtan, there's sometimes people are going by, and so if we occupy our time in someone who's not very sincere, then we may miss the opportunity of preaching to many sincere people. Otherwise, Prabhupada said the standard for discussing with someone in general, apart from the Sankirtan environment, is if a person's actually ready to listen. If when you're speaking, before you're even finishing, they're already coming up with some other argument, they're just trying to push their point, they're not actually even listening to what you're saying, and there's no use in wasting time with them, but very friendly and politely to invite them to come by so you can discuss in the temple where there's more time. You can explain that you have to try to meet as many people as possible, that they don't have to give them a small book and say, you don't have to pay for it even. If they like it, they can send something in. Sometimes. Generally, we don't like to give too much time unless the person's a little bit sincere. On the street, if a person wants to come by the temple, we don't mind, because that's what it's for. But if we take up a lot of time on Sankirtan, then that can have those negative effects. Sure that most devotees, they learn to play a little bit by ear. Sometimes they take the risk with such people, and many times they get burned. Sometimes it pays off. It's hard to just make a blanket rule, but in general we just try to avoid spending too much time with anyone. When we're out in Sankirtan, because we're like bumblebees, we have to visit a lot of flowers. Each flower only gives one drop of honey, or one particle of pollen, so we have to collect so many to create one drop of honey. What to speak if you go to a flower, it has no honey, no pollen, then I don't think the bee would spend too much time. If you see a little spark, you fan it. Try to get the person engaged. If they're not that interested, then what can be done? Politely bow out. In this regard, you can probably get advice from the other Sankirtan devotees who are more experienced. They give some practical realization in this regard, which kind of people are potentially cultivatable under those circumstances. Any other question? Even though there's this mercy of Lord Caitanya, we shouldn't, even though one may get that some symptoms of love for Godhead while chanting Lord Chaitanya's name, to be a true follower of Lord Caitanya, we should also try to avoid committing offenses. As for the Sajias, they consider that, because you chant Lord Chaitanya's name and He's so merciful and you get ecstasy, so why bother trying to stop committing offenses? I think in the south here there's a certain brand of religion that's like that also. They say, since someone's died for their sins, don't try to stop committing sinful activity. So it also seems to be kind of a Sajya tendency in the Christianity. The Lord Chaitanya gives His mercy, but alright, so by chanting, if we get some ecstasy, if we get some inspiration, if we feel some transcendental happiness, then we should try to understand what is the way of solidifying our position of actually, if we feel any gratitude for what Lord Chaitanya has given, any experience or any kind of realization, then we should try to do what he has instructed, not just exploit his generosity and not reciprocate with that. We won't be able to maintain love for Godhead. Those type of devotees, even though they get some feeling temporarily that they don't go back to Godhead don't get pure love for Godhead on a permanent basis, they're not considered to be confidential devotees of Lord Chaitanya because they're deviating from his true teachings. They're taking advantage of his special generosity. Even Jagai Madai, they were real rascals, but once they took the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, they corrected themselves. And once they took initiation, they didn't fall down anymore. They stopped their rascaldom. No more questions? If someone's having trouble, then they should channel out of Lord Chaitanya's name so they get a special mercy, some special benediction. He is the most merciful. Hare Krishna. Jayapataka Swami Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada.